that's some man. My brother got 13 years old. Stop saying that.
Eric Smith choked and battered the young life out of Derek Roby.
The scariest thing about evil is not its face, but its age. In August of 1993, the town of Savona, New York, was the kind of quiet place where neighbors waved at each other, children played freely on the sidewalks, and the sound of laughter often echoed through the trees. But one morning, that peace was shattered, replaced by whispers, sirens, and a single name that would forever stain the town's innocence: Eric Smith.
He was about that tall. He weighed 40 pounds. He lived 4 years and 10 months. And that person killed him.
He was 13 years old. Red hair, freckles, thick glasses that made him look like every shy, bookish kid you'd expect to see on a school playground. But behind those glasses was a mind carrying years of anger, humiliation, and rejection. Eric had been bullied for most of his short life, mocked for his looks, teased for his awkward speech, even pushed around for things beyond his control. He smiled less with each passing year, until one day, something inside him finally snapped. That morning, 4-year-old Derek Roby decided to walk to summer camp by himself, just half a block away from home. It was supposed to be safe, but on that walk, he met Eric. The two boys crossed paths on a small dirt trail shaded by trees, just minutes from the playground. Eric smiled at him, the kind of smile that feels harmless at first glance. He told Derek he knew a shortcut. The boy trusted him. What happened next would become one of the most haunting crimes in New York's history. Eric led Derek off the main path, into a small clearing. There, years of pent-up rage erupted all at once. He struck the child, over and over, until the woods fell silent again. It wasn't planned, and yet every motion carried something deliberate, as if he'd been rehearsing the moment in his mind. When police first questioned him, Eric seemed oddly composed, even helpful. He said he'd seen Derek that morning and wanted to help find him. Investigators noted how calm he was, how talkative. But something about his story didn't sit right. He was too precise with his details, too confident about what he'd noticed. And when he described the scene later, it became clear he knew things only the killer could know. A few days later, Eric's mother, sensing her son's torment, took him to the police station. There, sitting across from detectives, the boy finally confessed. He admitted to what he'd done in chilling detail, saying he'd wanted to see what it felt like to hurt someone. For the first time, the small town realized evil didn't always look like a monster in the shadows. Sometimes, it looked like a kid on a bicycle. Eric was charged as a juvenile with second-degree murder. The trial became a national debate. How do you punish a child who committed an act most adults can't comprehend? Was he born broken, or made that way by years of cruelty? Psychologists pointed to explosive rage disorder and deep emotional neglect. Others simply said he wanted control in a world where he had none. He was sentenced to 9 years to life in prison. But Eric would spend nearly 28 years behind bars before being released in 2021, at age 41.
A man with a history of domestic violence breached the sanctuary of home when he broke into his ex-wife Alyssa Mathewson's apartment, armed with a knife. Ignoring a restraining order, Summers attacked Alyssa, stabbing her repeatedly in an attempt to rape and kill her. Education warns that restraining orders are lifelines. Swift enforcement and support for victims could prevent such escalations. Alyssa fought back, surviving with severe injuries, but Summers kidnapped her, driving to a remote location to continue the assault. Alyssa's 14-year-old daughter, who witnessed the attack, called 911, her voice trembling. "He's hurting my mom." Police launched a manhunt, arresting Summers after a tip. Laws under Florida's kidnapping statute, FLA-Stat Section 787.01, and attempted murder, Section 782.04, mandated life. The 2019 Hillsborough County Circuit Court trial featured Alyssa's harrowing testimony. "He looked me in the eye. It was terrifying." Summers' daughter and ex-wife were cross-examined, their fear palpable. The jury convicted him of kidnapping, attempted murder, and rape. Judge Mark Kaiser called his actions heinous and unforgivable, sentencing him to life without parole, the consequence. Summers showed no remorse, his stare cold as he was led away. Alyssa's family hugged her, tears of relief mixing with trauma, the courtroom a space of hard-won survival.
I still don't believe that he pointed a gun at a police officer because my son would be dead. You know, police officers don't shoot warning shots.
You are lucky to be standing here in front of me today instead of being in the ground.
This is the story of Lance Dyer. For years, Dyer wore a badge. A police officer in Georgia, respected in his community, the kind of man parents pointed to as a role model. He believed deeply in control, not just of others, but of himself. But the irony of control is that those who crave it most are often the ones who lose it first. Lance's colleagues noticed it before the headlines ever did. A change in tone, small lapses in judgment, decisions that blurred the line between enforcement and ego. He began taking risks, bending procedures, cutting corners that no officer should. Still, people looked the other way. He was one of them. But one night, during a domestic disturbance call, everything fell apart. The confrontation began as routine, an argument between partners, a tense but familiar scene. Dyer arrived alone, calm but rigid. Witnesses later said they saw a shift in his demeanor, from composed to confrontational, a growing aggression that didn't match the situation. Then, within seconds, words became violence. A flash. A shot. Silence. At first, Dyer claimed it was self-defense, that the man lunged, that he had no choice. But when investigators reviewed the body cam footage, a different story emerged. It wasn't chaos. It was escalation. A decision made, not forced. The suspect had been unarmed. The level of force was unjustified. The department tried to contain the fallout, citing procedural error. But when internal logs revealed tampering with timestamps and missing footage later recovered, the illusion of protection collapsed. Lance Dyer was charged with aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and violation of oath. In court, he stood where so many before him had stood, on the other side of the badge. The prosecutor described his actions as a betrayal of every ounce of public trust he once carried. The judge's words were heavier still. When you wear the uniform of justice, you do not own the power. You borrow it from the people. And when you misuse it, you return it in disgrace. Lance's conviction sent ripples through his community. For some, it was justice served. For others, a painful reminder that authority without accountability is just another form of danger. But if Lance Dyer's story exposed the corruption of power, the next case revealed something far more unsettling: the corruption of privilege. A story that made the world question whether justice could truly be blind when wealth stood in the way.
At first I fought them. I had no reason to live, and doing this was the only thing I wanted, but I was Christian. Fear of hell was the only thing that was stopping me.
October 15, 2018, Barron, Wisconsin. Jake Patterson, 21, a reclusive loner, breached a family's safety by breaking into the home of James and Denise Kloss, shooting both parents and abducting their 13-year-old daughter, Jamie. Education highlights that isolation breeds dangerous obsessions. Community awareness of withdrawn neighbors could prompt early intervention. Patterson, obsessed with Jamie from a school bus sighting, held her captive in a soundproof bed for 88 days, chaining her and forcing silence. Jamie escaped in January 2019, running to a neighbor who called 911. "It's Jamie Kloss." Patterson was arrested hours later. Laws under Wisconsin's first-degree intentional homicide statute, Wisconsin Stat Section 940.01, and kidnapping, Section 940.31, mandated life. His 2019 Barron County Circuit Court trial was emotional. Jamie testified, her voice steady, "I would do anything to bring them back." Patterson pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, confessing, "I kidnapped her and killed her parents." Judge James Babler sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms without parole, plus 40 years for kidnapping. The consequence: the public can only be safe if you are incarcerated until you die. Patterson showed no emotion, his family absent. Jamie's aunt hugged her, the courtroom filled with the Kloss family's quiet strength.
Oh, Lord, oh, yes, there's another child in the ditch. Oh, my God.
This is the case of Ethan Couch, the teenager who became infamous for one word: affluenza. June 15th, 2013. A warm summer night in Burleson, Texas. 16-year-old Ethan Couch was driving a Ford F-350 pickup truck down a 2-lane road with 7 other teens packed in the bed and cab. He'd been drinking heavily at a friend's house.
16-year-old Ethan Couch was 3 times the legal drinking limit and speeding when his truck crashed into and killed 4 pedestrians.
Later toxicology reports showed his blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit, and he had Valium in his system. As he sped down the road, nearly 70 miles per hour in a 35 zone, he lost control. The truck veered off, plowing into a group of people helping a stranded motorist. 4 were killed instantly. 9 others were injured, including one of Ethan's own passengers, who was left paralyzed for life. What came next would ignite one of the most controversial trials in modern legal history. Ethan's defense team argued that he was a victim of his own upbringing, that his wealthy parents had raised him without boundaries, without consequences, and therefore, he couldn't understand the gravity of his actions. They called it affluenza, a supposed condition of privilege. The idea sounded absurd, like a satire of justice itself. But in the courtroom, it worked. Instead of a 20-year prison sentence, Ethan was given 10 years of probation and therapy. No jail time, no accountability. The public erupted in outrage. Families of the victims sat in disbelief as the gavel fell. The phrase, "too rich to care," became synonymous with Ethan Couch. His case became the face of a broken system, one that seemed to forgive wealth while punishing poverty. 2 years later, Ethan violated his probation when video footage surfaced showing him at a party surrounded by alcohol. When authorities moved to arrest him, he disappeared. It turned out he and his mother, Tanya Couch, had fled to Mexico. They were found weeks later in Puerto Vallarta, living in a rented villa, using fake names. The man who once claimed he didn't understand consequences was now running from them. Upon extradition, Ethan was sentenced to 2 years in jail for violating probation. His mother was also arrested for aiding his escape. Yet even then, public outrage didn't fade. It deepened, because justice, for once, seemed powerless against privilege. Ethan's case raised a haunting question. What happens to a society when consequence no longer applies to the comfortable?
Her daughter walks out of the door and she never comes home. She never comes home.
May 2001, East Tilbury, Essex, England. Stuart Campbell, 38, uncle and guardian to 15-year-old Danielle Jones, breached familial trust by grooming her for months, luring her to his home under false pretenses, then murdering her. Education stresses that familial abusers exploit authority. Open family dialogues and reporting mechanisms could protect teens. Campbell, with prior convictions for indecent assault, strangled Danielle and dumped her body in a shallow grave, her remains unfound for years. Campbell's 2002 trial at Southend Crown Court featured his computer's disturbing evidence. Indecent images of children and Danielle's photos. Laws under the UK's Murder Act 1965 and Sexual Offences Act 2003 mandated life. He claimed innocence, but witnesses and digital forensics convicted him of murder and abduction. Judge David Mitchell sentenced him to life with a 20-year minimum. Danielle's murder has affected hundreds. Campbell showed no remorse, maintaining he was framed. Danielle's father wept, "She'll never say goodbye." The courtroom, a place of unresolved pain, echoed with her family's loss, her body's location still a mystery.
I told her that if she said anything, that I would do something to her parents, and if I was in jail.
May 2019, Fort Worth, Texas. Michael Webb, 51, a convicted sex offender, breached a mother's embrace by snatching 8-year-old Sierra from her arms as she walked to school. Education urges stranger danger training. Community alerts on offenders could prevent abductions. Webb, on parole for child molestation, drove Sierra to a hotel, assaulting her sexually. Surveillance footage captured the snatch, leading to a manhunt. Webb's 2019 Tarrant County District Court trial was swift. Laws under Texas's aggravated kidnapping statute, Texas Penal Code Section 20.04, and sexual assault of a child, Section 22.021, mandated life. The jury convicted him in hours. Judge David Cook sentenced him to life without parole. The consequence, stating, "You're a danger forever." Webb cried during interrogation but showed no remorse in court. Sierra's mother hugged her, the courtroom filled with her family's relief and trauma, a space where a child's bravery triumphed over evil. Trevor Summers' knife in the night, Jake Patterson's 88-day cage, Stuart Campbell's groomed grave, Michael Webb's stolen embrace. These kidnappers turned trust into terror, their confessions and silences exposing the horror of their plans. From Florida's bloody apartment to Wisconsin's remote cabin, Essex's hidden body, and Texas's schoolyard snatch, their crimes scarred survivors and families. Education calls for restraining order enforcement, neighbor awareness, grooming prevention, and offender alerts to protect the vulnerable. Laws: FLA Section 787.01, Wisconsin Section 940.31, UK Murder Act, Texas Section 20.04, delivered life for breaches of safety. Consequences caged the monsters, but the trauma of Alyssa, Jamie, Danielle, and Sierra endures. What makes a kidnapper? Subscribe for more true crime explorations. Comment: can life sentences deter such evil? Hit the bell. Next, we uncover killers who confessed with a smile.